Hello everyone, this is Nehan here with another video. I know it's been a long time since I last posted anything, but be patient with me, I will come around. There will be a time where I'm going to be posting regularly without any long waiting periods in between the uploads, so there's that. Today, of all days, I'm going to be reviewing a book of an author that, for the life of me, I've never thought of reading, to be honest, mainly due to the high publicity she got because everyone, if you hear their comments about Virginia Woolf, will say that we are in awe with her writing style and how sophisticated it is and how we love her so much. But I was kind of skeptical from the beginning because of that reason. And as soon as I opened the book and read a few pages and forced myself to keep consistent with reading the book, at least to page 50, I was happy that I did that, and my mind was instantly engrossed, or however you pronounce that word, with how she decided to explain the situation of every character and how she decided to go about telling the story that she wanted to. And yeah, so today I'm going to be reviewing To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. If that wasn't clear enough, this is one of her last works that she published before she died. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Without further ado, let's get into the review itself. So right from the start, I would like to attach a disclaimer to this video by saying that I'm probably the worst person, well, not the worst, I'm not the best person, let's say, to give a review on a work of such a highly esteemed author, and one in which was really and is really famous in the world of English literature, as I am a baby to this world. And another thing that struck me as curious about this book was the rating that it got on Goodreads, because that's my main source for knowing if a book was good or bad, is by looking at the review. If the rating score is higher than 4.0, then this is a phenomenal book. I'm going to read it. It's in my reading list. But if it is like lower than 3.8, I'm not even I'm not going to even consider reading it. And the reason why I read this book was because it was like a deal of 3 for 10, and I just picked this one up among the other two. But my point being, after finishing this book, I think I have some ideas as to why this book was not found as much of a popularity as other easy to follow books with linear stories have found their places amongst um, the populace, the general populace who read books, who decide which book is greatest. It's the norm, right? Like if you think that Brothers Karamazov is the best book ever, well, for one, you thought correctly, and for two, you should not assume that that book is anything that could be comparable to this one or to any Virginia Woolf book. And for two, you should not assume that a book, as I did assume previously, that the book is the and its greatness is mainly defined by its score and the score that it gets, because most of the people that might read this story, the storyline, because it's not linear, as I said, might not seem as interesting to them. But if you think of it from a literature point of view, it is very rich in content, and it is very densely packed, and that might be the part of the reason why people do not continue reading this book and actually giving it a shot. Or if they are giving it a shot, then they should probably change the way they read books. So let's get into the writing style of Woolf. And I'm not sure that the things I'm going to say are going to be particularly categorized as in her writing style, but here we go, anyways. She writes in such a way that makes you feel as if every line is exactly where it should be, serving a purpose, a part of the whole. When Virginia Woolf writes a paragraph, then it means something. When you see a paragraph ending before another one starting, that's probably most likely for sure because she knew what she was doing. There's a reason behind that. It's not like other books where a paragraph ends, you are left with another listless thread of conversation that you have to read for the rest of the day, so that by the end of it, you have only one or two good pointers extracted from it and be proud with yourself. She's not like that. She will give you the description within the conversation within the psyche of the characters. It is so elaborate. Everything with her is so amazingly well thought out. It's like a big, beautiful canvas of painting that you have to go through pixel by pixel in order to get a good grasp of why every line was where it was. I'm not sure if I made sense, but if I didn't, that means probably that you have to go and pick up a book that says Virginia Woolf on it with the title of one of her books. So, but of course, don't go now. I mean, watch the video till the ending so you have a better understanding of it all. Um, I'm going to tell you how she decided to divide the story. She decided to do it in this way. She decided to divide the whole story into three major parts. The first one, which is the longest, it goes on for about 130 pages, is the window. The second one is time passes, and the third one is the lighthouse. Now, the first part, in this part, you as the reader are going to be reading about the Ramsey family, which is comprised of Mr. Ramsey, Mrs. Ramsey, along with their 8 children, which brings the total of the family to 10, and with a couple of auxiliary characters such as Mr. Banks, Mr. Carmichael, Charles Tansley. And if all of these characters seem a little bit too much for you because there's too many children um, running around throughout the story, in my opinion, just don't pay too much of a close attention to any of the children for sure, except for Lily. Lily Briscoe is the most important one. Prue is the most important one. Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, of course, but the other ones, they are kind of like there to fill up the void and the empty space of the story, and they make it seem a bit more natural, the story itself. Because once you start reading this book, all of these characters might seem ambiguous in the role that they might play throughout the story. So just highlight the names that you see for the first time, and that would be the origin place for you to understand the relationships of each character to one another, because that's the that's what helped me, to be honest, going throughout the book. Throughout this first part, which is the longest, as I've mentioned, Wolf gives you a bit more of a psychological evaluation into Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey and Lily Briscoe in particular. Most of the story takes place and is set in a third person view, and most of it is seen through the lens of Lily Briscoe, Mrs. Ramsey, and a couple of times Mr. Ramsey throughout the first part, that is. But it is a kind of different style that you're used to. Like, there is the psychological evaluation, of which there is a lot. There's a lot of poetically described surroundings, season, the weather, everything, emotions, that the reader might get confused because sentences are a bit long, as in like 6 or 7 line long, and that was not something that I was used to, but it grew on me as I progressed throughout the book. And part 2 now. Second part is titled Time Passes, and is exactly what you might think of it. Time passes during the second part, obviously. How obvious could I have been? But the thing that was most saddening and dark for me about this part was the fact that too many characters died. And this is not to any surprise. It might be to any surprise to you guys, but as I was reading some of her biography, some of Woolf's biography, I found out that this was not only her last book, but she implemented a lot of the characteristics and uh, uh, family dynamics of her own childhood, and how her father and his father, how her mother and her father were kind of interacting with one another, and how their emotions were directed towards Virginia. And this was kind of shocking to me, but it made what I read more realistic, in that it was coming from a place that was true within the, the author. Like, she felt it. She did not synthesize the emotions. She did not synthesize. She might have imagined that her father or her mother was have had these set of emotions, but nonetheless, it is coming from a real personal experience. Part titled The Lighthouse, I have the most mixed feelings about, because it seemed to me a conclusion to parts 1 and 2. Because mainly in part 1, what you will see is this enthusiasm from Mr. Ramsey in children's part of making a trip to the lighthouse. But every time either Mrs. Ramsey rejects going to the lighthouse at that particular day, or the weather situation does not allow it. However, it is because, keep in mind, this is a summer house for the Ramseys, so they are here for only once throughout the year. So this is kind of a vacation for the children. But in the third part, you will see the family eventually coming to a house after the time span of 10 years have passed, during which Mrs. Ramsey died. Prue died, I think, from miscarriage, and Andrew died, another child, from the war. Because during these 10 years, presumably, this was the period whereby the First World War has started and finished, and this whole thing is describing the events after the First World War, and after all those deaths and tragic events that happened and impacted the whole family. Thus, in part 3, you will see this imbalance between the emotions of each character, namely Lily Briscoe. Most highlighted ones are Lily Briscoe, Mr. Ramsey. He is so distraught by the thought of no Mrs. Ramsey being around to comfort him, from the standpoint of his philosophy works, because I keep missing she and he and using them interchangeably, but that seems to be a theme. If I used it and did not correct myself in your own imagination. But yeah, Mr. Ramsey is really disheveled and so unbalanced because of no Mrs. Ramsey, and then Lily Briscoe is not having any mother figures and any fierce figures to look up to. Therefore, she is a bit depressed, and other children as well. They are not happy that they are making the trip to the lighthouse. They are feeling resentful of being forced actually to go to the lighthouse, because the time that they were excited to go to the lighthouse has passed, and nonetheless their mother is dead, their brother and their sister is dead and are dead, and everything is kind of changed, which takes the essence out of the reasons why they wanted once to make this trip. But now that they are actually doing it, it feels so different from the time that they were so excited about. I'm sure you guys will love this book as much as I did, and if you don't, then don't talk to me. And one thing that I've learned about YouTube algorithm, not about this book, is if you push the like button, it helps the channel to be found more. So, I mean, if you like this video and if you actually stayed up until the very end, uh, consider smashing the like button. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. It's to no cost to you. I mean, you have to consume energy to go to the like button and then press the button itself, actually. But, I mean, come on, do it for your pal. Here's your hand. Thank you for staying up until the very end, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And just know that better days are ahead. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye.